Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're uncovering one of the darkest and most puzzling stories from Natchez in 1841. This is the tale of three brothers whose arrival at a plantation set off a chain of events so sinister it ultimately destroyed 7 families. Their actions, their secrets, and the chilling consequences that followed became a nightmare that no one could fully explain. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? And make sure you subscribe, because every story here comes from long hours of research into rare historical records and hidden archives to bring you the truth behind the mystery. The three brothers arrived in Natchez in the early spring of 1841 when the air was still cold from the winter and the river mist lingered over the town. They walked into the plantation with a quiet determination that immediately caught the attention of a few workers who noticed their deliberate movements. Their clothing was simple yet neat, their hands rough but steady, and their faces revealed nothing of their past. No one knew where they had come from or why they had chosen this particular plantation, and their silence made people uneasy as whispers began to circulate among the workers. From the very first day the brothers studied everything around them. They watched the routines of the overseers, the way the livestock moved in the fields, and the interactions of the workers. Every glance seemed calculated, every movement precise, as if they were cataloging every detail to be used later. The plantation felt different in their presence, as if an invisible weight had settled over the land. The workers tried to avoid eye contact with them while the overseers observed cautiously but could not pinpoint why. Their instincts told them something was wrong. The brothers rarely spoke to anyone outside their group, and when they did it was brief and controlled. They communicated with subtle gestures and glances that no one else could interpret. Their presence began to influence the daily life of the plantation as small disturbances started to occur. Tools were misplaced, livestock acted unusually, and shadows seemed to follow their movements. People began to feel a creeping tension that was hard to explain, and the ordinary rhythms of life were disrupted without anyone understanding why. As the days passed, it became clear that the brothers were not ordinary laborers. There was a sharpness to their eyes and a precision to their movements that suggested they had experienced more than anyone could imagine. Workers whispered about their past, speculating on stories of tragedy and violence that might have followed them. Despite their calm demeanor, there was a sense of danger that hovered around them, and an unspoken understanding that their arrival marked the beginning of events that would change the plantation forever. The three brothers carried with them a reputation that was whispered about long before anyone truly knew them. Stories of their past had traveled ahead of them through former workers and distant plantations, though most of the tales were fragmented and uncertain. Some said they had been involved in mysterious deaths and disappearances, others claimed they had caused ruin wherever they had lived, but no one could confirm the truth. Their reputation was hidden yet powerful, shaping the way people instinctively reacted to their presence even before seeing any concrete actions that could be blamed on them. When they arrived, the brothers said very little about themselves, answering questions with curt responses or silent stares that unnerved those around them. The workers quickly realized that any attempt to dig into their history would be met with cold indifference or subtle threats of disapproval. Even the overseers who had hired them could not shake the uneasy feeling that came from their silence and the intensity in their eyes. The brothers seemed to carry invisible weight with them, as if the burdens of their past and the consequences of unknown actions followed them everywhere they went. The hidden reputation spread among the neighboring plantations as rumors traveled faster than the men themselves. Locals spoke in hushed tones of prior incidents and warned each other to keep distance, though they admitted they had no real proof of wrongdoing. Even the mere mention of their names caused unease and speculation about what they were capable of. Everyone sensed that the brothers were not ordinary men and that beneath their calm and obedient exterior lay a mind trained to calculate and manipulate far beyond what could be expected from simple laborers. As the days passed, the aura of mystery surrounding the brothers only deepened. Workers began to observe them closely, noting their routines and interactions with suspicion. The brothers' ability to blend in yet remain distant created a tension that was palpable and grew with each passing week. Their hidden reputation became a shadow over the plantation, shaping the thoughts and fears of everyone around them. People started to believe that disaster would follow and that the brothers were the harbingers of misfortune that no one could escape or fully understand. From the moment the three brothers settled on the plantation, strange and unsettling events began to occur that no one could explain. At first the incidents were small and easily dismissed. Tools would be misplaced, livestock acted nervously, and objects would appear in unusual locations. The workers noticed these oddities but could not understand how they were connected to the brothers. Every day the pattern became clearer, yet the reasons remained hidden, and a sense of unease began to grow among everyone on the plantation. As time passed, the disturbances became more pronounced and began affecting the daily life of the families who lived there. Doors would open on their own at night, shadows moved along the walls, and whispers seemed to echo in empty rooms. Animals would panic inexplicably, and even the overseers felt a growing tension they could not identify. Every action of the brothers seemed to coincide with these strange occurrences, yet when confronted they acted indifferent or feigned ignorance. Their calmness in the face of fear only deepened the mystery and made people question whether the events were natural or something far more sinister. The three brothers were always observing, always watching, as if they were studying the reactions of everyone around them. They moved through the plantation with purpose, noticing the smallest details and responding to circumstances before anyone else could react. Their awareness of the environment was uncanny, and it was as if nothing escaped their attention. The workers began to fear not just the unexplained events but the brothers themselves. Their presence became associated with the tension and unease that pervaded the plantation from sunrise to sunset. By the end of the first month, the plantation had changed in ways that were impossible to ignore. Ordinary life had been replaced with suspicion and fear as the families and workers tried to rationalize what was happening. The brothers' influence was subtle but pervasive, creating an atmosphere of control without words. The mysterious events had begun as small disturbances but were growing into a pattern that would eventually unravel the lives of everyone connected to the plantation. The stage was set for the tragedies that would follow, and it was clear that the three brothers were at the center of a mystery no one could yet understand. As the days on the plantation passed, the first signs of disappearances and unexplained disturbances began to emerge and cast a shadow over the families who lived there. Small belongings went missing from homes and barns, tools and personal items vanished without explanation. At first people thought it was carelessness or mischief, but the frequency and consistency of the incidents suggested something far more deliberate. Livestock that had once been calm became skittish, and some animals disappeared entirely, creating panic among the workers who relied on them for survival. Soon the disappearances began to affect the families directly. Children would vanish for hours only to reappear confused and frightened, and some were never seen again. Doors that were locked at night were found wide open in the morning, and strange markings appeared on walls and trees that no one could decipher. Neighbors began to whisper about curses and dark influences, but no one dared confront the brothers directly. The plantation had become a place where fear and suspicion ruled daily life, and no one felt safe in their own home. The brothers themselves remained calm and detached, as if they were orchestrating these events with precise intent. They moved through the plantation, observing every reaction with quiet satisfaction, never intervening openly but allowing the unease to grow naturally. Workers and families tried to make sense of the disappearances by creating theories and setting watches, but nothing stopped the pattern from continuing. The tension escalated, and the once familiar plantation became a place of dread where every creak and shadow carried the weight of uncertainty and terror. By the end of the first season on the plantation, 7 families had been deeply affected, their homes destabilized and their lives forever altered. The chain of disappearances and disturbances left an invisible mark that could not be erased, and everyone came to understand that the 3 brothers were at the center of a mystery that had no clear explanation. People feared their influence and whispered of the inevitable doom that seemed to follow them wherever they went. The plantation had been transformed from a place of routine labor into a landscape of terror, and the consequences of the brothers' presence were only beginning to unfold. The psychological fear and tension that the 3 brothers instilled among the locals began almost immediately, as their presence on the plantation created an invisible pressure that no one could ignore. Workers whispered nervously among themselves, watching every movement of the brothers with suspicion. Even the children sensed something unusual and would hide when the brothers walked by. The ordinary sounds of the plantation seemed amplified. The creaking of doors, the rustle of leaves, and the footsteps on the wooden floors all felt charged with unease and anticipation. As the days turned into weeks, the fear spread beyond the workers to the neighboring families. People began to alter their routines to avoid the brothers, keeping distance whenever possible and speaking only in hushed tones. Visitors noticed the tension immediately, and many chose not to come to the plantation at all. The fear was not just of physical harm but of something intangible, a sense that the brothers carried power over the environment itself. Conversations were dominated by speculation, and the atmosphere became heavy with paranoia, as no one could trust what they saw or heard. The brothers themselves seemed to feed off the tension. They never spoke unnecessarily and maintained a calm composure that contrasted sharply with the nervous energy around them. Their quiet observation created the impression that every action and reaction of the workers and families was being measured and analyzed. This heightened state of anxiety made people act unpredictably, often leading to mistakes, accidents, and conflicts that further fueled the sense of dread. It became clear that the psychological grip of the brothers was as powerful as any physical threat they might pose. By the end of their first months on the plantation, the fear and tension had become nearly unbearable. Even the most resilient workers showed signs of strain. Families argued constantly and neighbors avoided contact. The presence of the 3 brothers had altered the social dynamics of the area and instilled a pervasive unease that seemed to seep into every corner of the plantation. The psychological impact of their arrival set the stage for the unfolding tragedies and made it impossible for anyone to ignore the growing shadow that the brothers cast over Natchez, the first family to be completely destroyed by the chain of events set in motion by the 3 brothers was the McAllister family, a prominent household that had lived on the plantation for generations. At first the changes seemed subtle, small disruptions that could have been dismissed as bad luck. Tools went missing, livestock acted strangely, and minor accidents began to occur, each seemingly isolated. But over time, these small disturbances escalated, and the McAllisters found themselves unable to maintain their daily routines as fear and tension took hold. Children were the first to sense the danger, waking at night with nightmares and refusing to enter certain rooms or parts of the yard. The adults tried to rationalize the occurrences, attributing them to coincidence or the stress of plantation life, but the incidents grew too frequent to ignore. The family began to argue constantly, suspicions and paranoia spreading like wildfire through the household. Meals were eaten in silence, and servants avoided contact with the family members, fearful of the strange aura surrounding the house since the brothers' arrival. As the disturbances intensified, the McAllisters suffered financial and emotional setbacks. Crops failed inexplicably, livestock died, and some family members fell ill under mysterious circumstances. Local neighbors, aware of the brothers' growing reputation, began to whisper about curses and ill fortune, deepening the family's sense of isolation. The brothers themselves never intervened openly, but their quiet observation and calculated movement seemed to orchestrate the increasing turmoil with subtle precision. By the end of the season, the McAllister family was unrecognizable from the household they had once been. Relationships had fractured, resources had dwindled, and the constant tension left every member on edge. What began as subtle unease had escalated into total disruption, marking the first vivid example of the brothers' destructive influence. The tragedy of the McAllisters served as a chilling warning to the other families nearby that the presence of the three brothers was not to be underestimated and that no one on the plantation would remain untouched by the mystery they carried. As the events on the plantation continued to unfold, rumors and superstitions began to spread rapidly through Natchez. Neighbors and workers whispered about strange occurrences that no one could explain and attributed them to curses or dark forces at work. The stories grew with each telling, details became exaggerated, and the aura of fear surrounding the three brothers intensified. People began to avoid the plantation entirely, crossing the road or turning away when they saw the brothers approaching, as if their presence alone carried a contagious dread. The superstitions were fueled by eyewitness accounts of bizarre events and mysterious happenings that seemed to defy logic. Shadows moving where no one was present, objects appearing and disappearing at random, and unexplained noises in the night all contributed to a sense that something unnatural was occurring. Local families shared stories of children being afraid to sleep in certain rooms and animals acting erratically as if they could sense an unseen force. The tales became more elaborate as people speculated about the brothers' past and their potential involvement in previous misfortunes elsewhere. Even the authorities and clergy began to take note of the growing anxiety in the community. Some attempted to investigate or offer spiritual guidance but were met with little cooperation from those affected. Their efforts often failed to provide explanations, leaving the locals more fearful and more inclined to believe that supernatural powers or dark intentions were at play. The combination of real disturbances and imaginative speculation created a fertile ground for fear to grow unchecked. By the time several families had suffered significant losses, the superstitions had taken root in the collective consciousness of Natchez. Every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of shadow, and every unusual event was linked back to the three brothers. People began to speak of omens and curses as if the disaster that was unfolding was inevitable and preordained. The rumors and superstitions not only magnified the psychological terror on the plantation but also ensured that the legend of the brothers' influence would endure long after the immediate events had passed. As the mystery surrounding the three brothers deepened, the local authorities became increasingly involved, though their efforts were met with frustration and confusion. Reports of disappearances, strange disturbances and unexplained events reached the offices of magistrates and constables who attempted to investigate the incidents. They interviewed workers and families, but the stories were inconsistent and often exaggerated by fear. No concrete evidence could be found linking the brothers to any criminal activity. Despite the growing sense of unease throughout the community, the authorities attempted to observe the brothers directly, following them around the plantation and questioning them about their routines, but were met with calm composure and carefully measured answers. The brothers appeared cooperative on the surface, but their behavior suggested an awareness of every move made against them. They never revealed more than necessary and often deflected attention with subtle gestures or silent stares that unnerved the investigators. Every attempt to control the situation seemed to only heighten the tension and frustration among the officials. Local clergy and respected community members were also consulted as fear and superstition spread. Priests and ministers offered prayers and blessings, hoping to bring peace to the troubled families, but even their interventions failed to explain or halt the strange occurrences. The combination of practical investigation and spiritual guidance produced no answers, leaving the community to grapple with the unknown. People began to doubt whether any ordinary authority could intervene against what seemed to be a force beyond human understanding. As weeks passed, the pattern of destruction and mystery continued uninterrupted. Authorities documented what they could, but the reports only reinforced the perception that the three brothers were at the center of something inexplicable. Their presence seemed to defy the usual laws of cause and effect, and no intervention could halt the mounting fear. The failure of the authorities to explain or control events only strengthened the legend of the brothers and ensured that their mysterious influence would remain a topic of dread and speculation throughout Natchez for years to come. The pattern of destruction linking each affected family back to the three brothers became increasingly clear as time passed. Each household that suffered misfortune displayed similar signs of disturbance. Tools disappeared, livestock died without explanation, and members of the family experienced fear and confusion that no one could rationalize. Observers began to note that the brothers were always present nearby during these incidents, yet they never directly intervened in a way that could be proven. The subtlety of their influence created a sense that the chaos was orchestrated with precision and intent rather than chance or accident. Neighbors and workers began mapping the timeline of events, noting which families were affected and when. The connections between the incidents painted a chilling picture of deliberate progression. The brothers seemed to move strategically from one area to another, ensuring that their presence coincided with the disruption. Some families suffered minor disturbances at first, while others were immediately struck by severe incidents, creating a domino effect that left the entire community unsettled. People started to recognize that the events were not random and that the brothers were the common factor. Despite the growing evidence, the brothers maintained an outward appearance of normalcy. They worked alongside the others, carried out daily tasks, and spoke sparingly without giving away any hints about their intentions. This ability to blend in while maintaining control heightened the sense of helplessness among the affected families. Every observation of their calm composure in the midst of turmoil reinforced the belief that the brothers possessed knowledge or power beyond ordinary understanding and that they were deliberately orchestrating the misfortune that plagued the plantation. By the time several families had been irreversibly impacted, the pattern was unmistakable. The link between the brothers and the cascading disasters became undeniable to anyone paying close attention. Even those who had initially doubted the rumors could see the alignment of events and the subtle manipulation that went unnoticed by casual observers. The realization that each tragedy was connected to the brothers created a pervasive atmosphere of fear and inevitability, cementing their role as the architects of the plantation's unraveling and ensuring that their reputation would haunt the community long after the events themselves had passed. The final revelation of the brothers' secret motives and actions came gradually as the web of mystery unraveled through observation and whispers among the surviving families. People began to piece together the sequence of events, noticing that the brothers had carefully studied each household before any misfortune occurred. Their presence was never random, and the small disturbances that seemed harmless at first were in fact deliberate tests of control and influence. Each family had been assessed for weaknesses and vulnerabilities that could be exploited to maximize fear and disruption. Details emerged about how the brothers manipulated circumstances subtly. They would move objects, create noises, and position themselves in ways that heightened tension without ever directly harming anyone in an obvious manner. Their actions created confusion and mistrust among family members and workers as people began to doubt their own perceptions. By fostering paranoia and fear, the brothers ensured that the affected families would collapse under pressure while leaving themselves untouched by blame. It became clear that their strategy was calculated and methodical, designed to destroy lives slowly while maintaining the appearance of innocence. The surviving neighbors and authorities began to recognize a disturbing pattern in the brothers' behavior. Each incident followed a predictable progression, yet the method of manipulation was almost imperceptible. Stories from workers described the brothers observing from a distance, noting reactions, and adjusting their actions accordingly. Even the smallest details were taken into account as part of a larger plan. This level of meticulous planning revealed a chilling intelligence and cold detachment, suggesting that the destruction of the 7 families had been intentional from the start rather than the result of coincidence or chance. By the end of the mystery, the full scope of the brothers' influence became undeniable. Their motives, while never entirely articulated, appeared to revolve around control, fear, and the demonstration of power over everyone around them. The devastation they left behind was both psychological and material, permanently altering the community and leaving a legacy of terror. The revelation of their secret actions confirmed what people had long feared, that the 3 brothers had orchestrated the collapse of the 7 families with calculated precision, creating a legend that would endure for generations in Natchez and beyond. The lasting legend and haunting memory of the plantation mystery in Natchez endured long after the 3 brothers had vanished from the area. Stories of their arrival, the strange events that followed, and the destruction of 7 families were passed down through generations, growing in detail and intensity with each retelling. People spoke of the brothers in hushed tones, warning newcomers and visitors about the dark history tied to the land. The plantation itself became a place avoided by locals, its fields and buildings carrying an invisible weight that reminded everyone of the past horrors. Even decades later, those who had lived through the events recounted them with a mixture of fear and reverence. The legend of the brothers was not just about the physical destruction they caused but the psychological imprint they left on everyone who encountered them. Families who had once been neighbors remembered the fear, the mistrust, and the paranoia that had spread through their community, emphasizing how the mere presence of the brothers could disrupt ordinary life in ways that seemed almost supernatural. The story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how unseen forces, human or otherwise, could shape destinies in irreversible ways. Writers, historians, and storytellers later recorded fragments of the events, each adding interpretations that blurred the lines between fact and folklore. Some accounts suggested that the brothers were agents of revenge or carried personal vendettas, while others implied that they possessed knowledge or skills that defied ordinary understanding. Regardless of the interpretation, the legend reinforced the sense that the plantation and the surrounding area had been touched by something extraordinary and terrifying. The tale became a permanent fixture in the collective memory of Natchez, influencing local culture and sparking curiosity and fear for generations to come. The enduring power of the story lay in its ambiguity and the inability to fully explain the brothers' motives or actions. No official record or investigation ever captured the complete truth, leaving the mystery alive in the imagination of those who heard it. Visitors and locals alike spoke of a lingering presence on the land, a subtle reminder of the past that could not be erased. The haunting memory of the three brothers and the devastation they caused became a symbol of human cunning, fear, and the fragile boundaries of trust and safety, ensuring that the legend of Natchez's most notorious plantation mystery would never be forgotten.